Woody Guthrie, I wrote you a song about a funny old world that's coming along. It seems sick and it's hungry and it's tired and it's torn. It looks like it's dying and it's hardly been born. Hey, Woody Guthrie, but I know that you know.
Welcome to an interview of Jahanara Romney, who has kindly agreed to be part of the Greystone Park Psychiatric Hospital Oral History Project. The purpose of this oral history project is to preserve the voices of the people connected to the former Greystone Hospital and make them accessible to the public on the website www.greystoneoralhistory.com. This interview will focus on Jahanara's memories of her visit to Greystone's most famous patient, Woody Guthrie. In 1956, at the age of 43, folk singer Woody Guthrie was picked up for vagrancy in Morristown. He was committed to the nearby Greystone Park Psychiatric Hospital with an incorrect diagnosis of schizophrenia. He actually had Huntington's disease, the hereditary disorder that was not readily identified or treatable at the time. Woody's condition worsened steadily during his 5 years at Greystone, but he was visited often by friends and family. One frequent visitor was Bob Dylan, who was in his late teens and soon to become a legendary folk singer in his own right. On one occasion, Dylan invited a friend of his, Jahanara Romney, who was then known as Bonnie Beecher, to join him on a visit to visit Woody at Greystone. Bob Dylan and Johanna knew each other from attending college together in their home state of Minnesota. Before starting this interview, I would like to give some background on Jahanara, who has led a notable life. As a young woman, she was an actress and singer. She is best known for her role in an episode of The Twilight Zone. Jahanara married Hugh Romney, who was later known as Wavy Gravy, and they became part of the budding 1960s counterculture scene. They started the Hog Farm commune in California, which continues to this day. The commune members provided security at the 1969 Woodstock Festival. Jahanara and her husband's community endeavors are numerous. In 1983, they co-founded Camp Win a Rainbow, a camp for circus and performing arts, which Jahanara continues to serve as administrative director of. In 1978, they played an integral role in establishing SEVA, an international healthcare organization that has restored sight for over 3.5 million people. Jahanara is a lifetime honorary board member of SEVA. My name is Stephanie Kipp, and I am the Oral History Project Manager. I am serving as Jahanara's interviewer, and we are meeting in Berkeley, California on October 12th, 2019. Thank you very much for agreeing to be part of this project. Could you tell us a little bit about prior to your visit to Woody Guthrie? How did you know Bob Dylan?
Oh, well, I'm originally from Minnesota and was living still in Minnesota at that time. And I went to high school at the University High School on campus. And there was one single coffee house on the university campus. And Bobby used to come down from Hibbing and go hang out there and play music in not officially, but I would leave for my lunch hour or after school. I would go hang out at the coffee house. And so we met at that coffee house when I was in high school. And then we both, the following few years, went to the University of Minnesota and got to know each other better there when we were both living in Minneapolis.
What were you studying?
I was studying theater arts, and he was studying music.
Okay, and you both ended up going into that.
Yeah.
Okay, so how did you end up in the New York area that you two connected to go out to Greystone?
In high school, I had a remarkable theater arts teacher named Karen Osborne. And when I graduated from high school, she and I became roommates and lived on campus. And she took... When I was in high school, I would go as part of her group to visit New York once a year with my high school class and go to theater things. And then when I was out of high school, I would be an adult supervisor, not supervisor, but a chaperone for the then high school students. And so we were in New York for several days, and I would look up Bobby, who was at that point living there.
Okay, and then how did it come to pass that he invited you to come along with him?
Well, we were in touch with each other after he moved to New York in the heaven knows when, early 60s. I graduated from high school in 59, so probably early 60s. And he was reporting back that he, who had been trying to figure out how to actually meet Woody Guthrie, had succeeded and become a regular visitor. And people in Minneapolis, this is my impression of what happened. People in Minneapolis did not really believe that was true. So when I was in New York and Bob and I checked in with each other, I think he wanted me to witness him having access to Woody in the hospital. So he brought me with him, I think, so that I could go back and tell all of our friends. Now, if you're interviewing Dylan, he may tell it different. That was my impression at the time.
Okay. Did he describe the hospital to you before you went there?
My memory is very faded on this. He described that he had gone there several times and be unable to get in, and that it was like a fortress castle. And I think that at one point he was there when somebody from his family came and they walked in with him. They walked him in and made it. Now, that is what I remember. And that there were family members that visited, and they facilitated, Bob being on the guest list, and then he was on the guest list, so that when I arrived, I was then Dylan's guest, and they let me in on his say-so. When we visited, there was nobody else visiting Woody except Bobby and I that day.
And even with his pre-approval, what sort of procedure did you have to go through to actually get in?
What I mostly remember is I was expecting to visit a hospital, and it felt like I was visiting a jail. And because there was like somebody at a desk and just talking to them. But then there was a clanging gate door that was like a sliding crash, and this is the one memory I'm absolutely sure of, and it was very intimidating and scary, and I felt like I was entering a prison rather than a hospital. And where I went in, what was clearly something like a day room, I was under the impression that I was visiting a hospital where Woody was an ambulatory patient, and so therefore he was put with people with mental problems because they were ambulatory, and Woody didn't need to be staying in a bed. That's what I thought. I understand now that the whole hospital was a psychiatric hospital, but this was a day room, and there were tables, and people were wandering around and sitting at tables talking with visitors. It was probably a visiting room. And Woody and Bob and I were at a table to ourselves. And at one point, Bob brought his guitar and played Woody some songs, some of Dylan's versions of Woody's songs, which was very pleasing to Woody. And Woody had a Huntington's disease, Huntington's chorea or cholera, and had a lack of control of his physical body. But he still had some control, And at one point, he wanted to play a song. And Bob offered his guitar, and Woody said, "No, I want my guitar." So one of my memories is that they called a nurse over who was, monitoring the room, and asked for her to please go get Woody's guitar. And I remember her saying, in a voice as though you were talking to a child, "Oh, Woody, do you play music?" Just went, "Oh my God, they have no idea who this man is." She was nice, but it was like, I realized that he was in a place where he was just another guy that couldn't control his body and didn't have any history to them. So she did find his guitar. And she brought him his guitar, and he wanted to play a song for us. And he played a song for us with some physical difficulty, but still. And what I think the song was Hard Traveling. And I've been doing some hard traveling, I thought, And there's so many Woody Guthrie songs that I learned in my life, but I hope my memory is right. I believe that's the one song he played for us. And he was able to do it with some physical difficulty. And I had some idea of who Woody Guthrie was at that point. And I was just paralyzed with awe that I was getting to be present for that. And we did spend quite a while together in that room. It wasn't just a brief visit. We was there probably a couple of hours. And I needed to work through Woody's initial impression of me, which Dylan fiendishly introduced me to Woody by saying, "This is my friend Bonnie, and she's a fan of Josh White." And I was a fan of Josh White. I liked the blues. I was, a Minnesota teenager who was scrambling to try to find musical music that wasn't easily available to me. However, Josh White had been a witness in the HUAC hearings for Are You a Communist or Not? And Woody had been snagged with that a little bit. And the fact that I was a fan of Josh White was not a great way to introduce me to Woody Guthrie. And I was spent the rest of my time trying to overcome that impression, which I did. He was very lovely to us, and I think his guitar still had a message on it that said, "This machine kills fascists," or I think that was the message. And there was people who were wandering around the room or also receiving visits who were clearly in another realm mentally. And I remember one in particular that seemed to know that Woody at least had some, or maybe knew who Dylan was, I don't know, kept coming up to the table and saying, "I understand you've been to Greenwich Village." And he kept saying that. He'd come over like every 10 minutes. "Tell me about Greenwich Village." And so finally Dylan did tell him a little bit about Greenwich Village. And we didn't encounter anyone else who was there, but there was probably 30 people in the visiting room and other visitors.
Were you able to hear the conversation, or was it really noisy in there?
I don't remember it being noisy. It was quite a spacious room. Mm-hmm. And there was a place where there was, if it wasn't a balcony, at least there were windows, and people were sitting over by the windows mostly. And our table was by itself, and I was able to hear, but not other people's conversations.
Did you get a sense that Woody appreciated Dylan's rendition of his music? Very
much. Oh. They were good friends by the time I got there. He was very glad to see Bobby. And Bob had been a regular visitor once he was allowed to visit. He had evidently been there a lot. And the people who worked at the registration desk, and not the nurses, but one of the nurse that brought us the guitar, knew who Dylan was, or knew him as a visitor, as a welcome visitor of Woody's. And so did this one guy who wanted to know about Greenwich Village.
What about smoking? Because Nora Guthrie tells a sweet story about Woody's inability to really control all of his motions, and other people sometimes when he would try to smoke would immediately rush over. And in Nora's words, Dylan got it that Woody needed to try as best he can to smoke, light his cigarette, even if it took him a few attempts. Do you remember smoking at all?
When you tell me this story, that I feel like I encountered something like that.
Okay.
But I can't remember it clearly. Woody had a hard time. We must have had a snack or a tea or something, because it was hard for him to control feeding himself. I don't know what it was, if we had crackers or if it was just a Coke or something. But, and I think I may remember that, but this was a long time ago.
I'm impressed by your memory.
Well, it was Woody Guthrie. It's like, this is not a non thing. This was when I talked to kids at camp, and they ask the staff people to interview, and they say, what's the most exciting thing that ever happened to you in your life? And I've known a lot of really exciting, interesting people, and I always say, I spent an afternoon with Woody Guthrie.
All right. That's great. Do you remember your goodbyes to him?
No, I don't remember the goodbyes. I remember the door crashing again behind us, and what a loud noise it made, and how prison-like it was, and scary.
Do you recall when you traveled there by train, maybe? I think that's the only way you might have
I don't know. I remember talking to Bobby about how we were going to get there.
Right.
And there was evidently there's some people that used to visit Woody or knew he was there that lived in the nearby, maybe we could drive in with them, but we didn't. And then were we going to take a bus or a train? And I think we took public transportation of some kind, but honestly, I have no direct memory of getting there. I remember the castle-like building that we had to go through, talking to someone before we came behind the prison sliding metal door that made a loud noise. And I wonder how we got there. No idea. But I believe we didn't ride with someone, and I could be wrong.
Okay. Do you recollect your thoughts or feelings after you had visited him, right after? I mean, did you two talk when you were going back to the city about how the visit had gone, or?
Well, I don't know. Bob and I were friends, so we just carried on our life's conversation. Let's see. I can't directly remember. This had a great impact on me, and I was I was overwhelmed with joy to, as a person, a teenager in Minnesota who was looking for a certain kind of music that was very hard to find, And I knew who Woody Guthrie was, and I probably am the only one of my friends that did, except for Dylan and our mutual friends. And so I was very touched, and so I would have talked to Bobby about that. And I probably would have talked to him about, oh, yes, I'll go back and tell, Dave Whitaker and Red Nelson and all our friends back in Minnesota.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one last question. How was this experience of us chatting about your trip to Greystone and seeing Woody Guthrie? How has that been for you to recollect memories of this iconic place and person that was there?
I'm glad that every aspect of Woody Guthrie's life and who he was to humanity is being looked at, and people are learning more about it. And a musician now that we know named Steve Earle, who is a sort of well-known musician now,
I remember one very moving anecdote that Dylan talks about when he would light his cigarette. He had a lighter that some fans from England had sent. And watching him try to light the cigarette is like that. When you have Huntington's, it's really hard. And Bob would tell the other kids, they would try to help, and he goes, "Oh, he wants the respect. I can do this." He didn't want to be pitied, So everyone, they would back off, and Dylan would say, "No, don't try to light his cigarette. He can do it. You just sit there and wait for him to do it." And Dylan really kind of got it. He really got that Woody was in a situation where he didn't want to lose respect. He didn't want people having pity on him. And he wanted to maintain his dignity. So whatever, if his lighter went like this a few times, you just had to sit and watch.